Well, welcome to A Trip to the Moon Live again. It's only a few days since we were last with you, but we are back because some more exciting news from a Tranmere Rovers point of view. In that there's a familiar face who's going to be back at Prenton Park. Familiar face to us because, people of my age have seen him on the TV. People of the older generation will have seen him actually play for Rovers. But Nigel Adkins, former Tranmere goalkeeper, former Scunthorpe, Southampton and Charlton manager, is back at Prenton Park. He has taken on the role of technical director. And, we're going to react to the news over the next maybe 20, 25 minutes. We won't do a long show like we did on Thursday with the news that Ian Dawes had been appointed manager. But certainly there's plenty to talk about. Rich Davis is here. Hopefully Rob Pattinson is going to return. He has just frozen himself out, which is impressive to do on what must be the warmest day of the year so far. But Rich, I have to say, this has completely lifted the mood, hasn't it? After what was a pretty downbeat reaction on Thursday.
Oh, definitely. I am the happiest of happy clappers normally, and even myself, I was really even doubting. Well, I was doubting Mr. Palios's fight. I was doubting whether he was up for it, whether this was just part of an exit strategy. The Dawes appointment for me, it massively misread the room. There was far too much smoke that there can't have been fire, and some of the stories that have come around from the appointment of Dawes, I'm still not massively happy with it. However, I've got to say the actual appointment of the implementation of the strategy that was alluded to, what kind of looked at loose spin on a post from Mr. Palios on the club website the other day saying we've gone from recruiting experienced managers. Well, what we are doing is we've recruited an experienced manager, probably of a better standard than League Two, to be essentially, director of football. I'd like to think this limits what responsibilities Dawes and Danzi are going to have to deal with on a day-to-day. I think they're going to be more of a physical setting, teams up, training up, but the bigger decisions are going to trickle downhill from the likes of Palios and Adkins. So for me, I think it's a massive coup for Tranmere. I think it's a big win-win situation, because the downside I'd see of putting someone like Adkins in charge at the club, I think it took a lot out of Mark Palios sacking Mickey Mellon, because I think he really liked Mickey and he had a lot of respect for Mickey. There's no way that Mark Palios, I think, could sack Nigel Adkins, who's one of his, by all accounts, better buddies in the game, and genuine a lot of good respect for him, I think, from the club as well. So in this position, it's kind of a win-win for Nigel. I don't know what the remuneration and the package is like. Hopefully he's getting paid enough that he can move a little closer, and he can do some inspirational videos walking around West Kirby Marine Lake in the morning for us all, because that's exactly the kind of news us Tranmere fans needed after feeling so downbeat and so beat up about the lack of ambition coming from the club. Thinking, for me, someone who's been a massive Palios fan, and someone who's really loved the vision and the kind of self-sufficient football but still progressing up through the leagues kind of talk, that just fell on deaf ears when Dawes was announced the other night. Now, do you know what? I can understand what pennies they've pinched on Dawes. They've brought in someone with a bit of knowledge. I think I rather crudely put it on Twitter. Dawes and Danzi are going to be on the cones. All the big boy decisions are going to be down to Nigel and Mark. And for me, that gives me a lot more confidence going into next season with having nosy neighbours. And can I just throw in as well on this conversation, the day that we get good news, I'm also delighted to see Milton Keynes Dons come down, because I'm still not over COVID with them. So what a fantastic day it is to be a Tranmere fan.
In terms, Nigel Adley's just messaged me and he's just put it in the chat here as well. Rich is wearing the crest that Adkins used to wear. Obviously, Nigel playing for the club in the 80s, and in our best 11 series, he has been picked by several people as the best Tranmere goalkeeper that they played with and alongside. The club has changed immeasurably since he was last at Prenton Park. But what do you think he can bring to the role? What is his return to Tranmere actually going to do?
I think massively. First and foremost, the positivity side of it, what he brings in, is massive, because he is a man a bit like Mark Palios. Like, I think if we all joke about Palios, if you read the first few lines of his poem, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, sounds like Twitter. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you but make allowance for their doubting too, sounds like Twitter. You look at Mark Palios, living by his life by that if. I'm sure there must be a line in there somewhere for Palios. If you appoint a guy who's been sacked by Bangor, what you need to do is bring in someone who's been in the Premier League and inspired clubs wherever he's been. Yeah, okay, he's had a few appointments where he's not necessarily succeeded recently. I know he had very good tenure at Hull, and things went quite well for him there. But there's been a couple of positions since then, like Charlton, where it didn't work out too well. But I think for me, the vast knowledge and everything that he brings in, with that little bit of distance from maybe the day-to-day tasks of training and stuff like that, he offers a vast wealth of experience. He offers a massive positivity, a massive boost. He offers for us in the stands a whole load of credibility to claims that Palios makes, that he's actually taking this serious. Because I'm a massive Palios fan, and even I couldn't believe when they appointed Dawes that he was taking this serious. I thought this was an exit strategy. I thought this was a man who's deflated, who was wanting to kind of cash in and move out. I can't say that's the case. I can't think that Mark Palios would want to leave the club in this position now he's got someone like Nigel Adkins on board, because we've all kind of heard the stories of how close they are, and really the kind of person that Adkins is. He's not going to want to come in and work in a time of turmoil. So for me, I think it offers great stability, great vision for and as I said, credibility for Palios's vision in the stands. And I'm really excited by it. Over more so the fact that I was so deflated by the announcement of Dawes. And to be fair as well, I think another big thing and another big indication of how the project's going is Andy Hodgie coming back as well. Andy Hodgson coming back apparently in the playing in the staff. I've seen that come up online as well, which that would be massive. I was disappointed when he left to go to Blackpool. Being that they've kind of capitulated and blown up. They've had a couple of managers in a few months. I'm delighted to see someone like him come back, who was such a big person in the dressing rooms. Ironically, I had a guy that used to work for me that was in the same class as him in school, and I've heard a few things and how much he loved Tranmere himself, Andy. So to see him leave this season, it was a bit of a worry for me, if I'm honest. So to see him come back, I think that's a measure of maybe he thought the grass was greener. The project at Blackpool was a bit messed up, and maybe Tranmere have looked at the situation since he's gone and gone, do you know what, we need him back. He's a man that has very high standards, very high excellence. Comments made about him, seems a genuine nice guy, and to be fair, as much as he's not from the area, he seems a very Tranmere guy.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and you can go back and listen to our best 11 that we did with Hodgie as well. That was a few months ago, and you'll hear just how much of affection he has for the club in that interview as well. I'm going to say this tongue in cheek: is that 2 managers sacked by Bangor Tranmere have now got at the helm?
I think it is, isn't it? I think it is. But let's be honest. I think as all of the reasons that people didn't like Dawes have got to be the questions answered by the appointment of someone like Adkins in that director of football role. If we'd had someone wet behind the ears, someone come in as a director of football that everyone kind of, who, I think it would have been really quite a big save to come back from there for a lot of people. I'm pleased to see there's a lot of season ticket sales gone through in the last couple of days. Even myself, I must admit, I've not renewed mine as of yet. As soon as I saw that come through, it's getting done. The Dawes announcement really did turn me off on the whole project, and I thought, do you know what? I couldn't believe it. I buy a season ticket and I get to 10 games a year. I buy a full season ticket, but the reason I do it is because I like to give my money to the club to support the project. It's not because I'm Rockefeller and I can afford it, just because I think if I come on here and talk with you guys about it, I want to be a fully fledged season ticket holder. I was doubting that a couple of days ago. Now, I'm back in. I'm back to being positive. I'm getting my Mark Palios pajamas out the washing machine, and I'm off to buy some mango.
Let's go through some of the messages that we're getting down the side of the chat function. Paul Ritchie is feeling glass half full instead of glass half empty tonight, Paul, which is great. This is much more like it, he says. Feel better about the whole thing now. Andy Irvine, I wonder if the fans that got a season ticket refund a few days ago have repurchased. Mutron UK says, season ticket renewed tonight. This is exactly what we needed. And on the subject of season tickets, TRFC supporter liaison officers have been in touch with me this evening. They say we've seen a surge of season ticket card renewals and purchases since today's announcement. Some fans are still struggling to fathom out how to renew. For all renewals, their seats can be found under their reservations in their ticket accounts. It would be really helpful if you could point them our way. So basically, if you are struggling, slo@tranmererovers.co.uk is the email address to get in touch with, or you can get them on Twitter or Facebook as well. Rob Pattinson has fathomed the internet, which is always a struggle for many of us. Anyway, Rob, Rich has been eloquently giving us his reaction, despite being 4 or 5 pints deep today. What's your reaction to the Nigel Adkins news?
I haven't actually opened a beer yet, but I think I might shortly. I think we all needed something like this. Really, I think everyone's felt a bit kind of apathetic, underwhelmed. Where are we going? What's the direction of the last couple of weeks, but particularly since the news last week? I think it's a really strong appointment. I think it sends a message to prospective players, to current players that we might want to keep on, and to the fans, really, that we are trying something and we are actually backing that up. It's not just we saw in the announcement with Dawes the other day mention of this technical director role, and I think a few of us were sending messages like, well, is this going to come to fruition? Who would it be? What sort of person would they actually be looking to appoint? And I think it's a really astute appointment, and I think it probably works really well for Adkins as well. I think a few people might be questioning, well, why haven't we just brought him in as the manager? But he might be at the stage of career now where the idea of a more of a kind of 9-to-5 type role without all the travel, without all the stress and baggage that comes with being a first team manager, allows him to have oversight over a club in a way that you wouldn't as the manager necessarily, and allows him to work with some young kind of up and coming managers. I mean, we did see in the Neil Dan's appointments comms, there was a kind of mention that he knows the support systems being put in place, so obviously alluding to the fact that it was an opportunity to work with somebody like Nigel Adkins, and there's been some talk of, well, does he know League Two? I don't really personally think that a manager of his caliber will be able to understand the sort of player that we will need at the club. It'd be interesting to see what he brings, how that relationship's going to work with the kind of managerial team. But overseeing the football processes across recruitment, development, and management. Now, I'm not sure quite what that means. Overseeing management, I suppose it's overseeing the managerial team at the club. But obviously, we are sticking with this developmental model, and we want him to kind of be heavily involved in kind of leading that. I do hope that this time our director of football / technical director stays a little longer than the last time, because we had that kind of excitement with James Vaughan, and I think we had about 3 or 4 months, did we, of James actually in that role, after he'd been kind of promoted from his initial position. But I would think it's likely that Nigel Adkins is here for a bit longer. I don't know. There's been no mention of whether this is a full-time role or what kind of setup it's going to be, I suppose, at this stage, or how much he's actually going to be seen out and about around the club. But he brings a lot, I think, not just experience of football at all levels and the club, and that's a theme that runs through the 3 appointments, actually. But also, he's just a really positive person who really kind of believes in kind of a lot of that kind of developmental structure you put in place around a club in terms of how you make people feel, how you get people to buy into a project, how you set out with a sort of positive mentality. We saw all these videos he was doing during the lockdown around kind of starting the day in the right frame of mind and mental well-being and stuff like that. And I think probably we could all do with a bit of Nigel Adkins counsel at times on that front as Tranmere fans. But yeah, I think it's a sea change. I just wish we could have announced this all in one, in kind of one big announcement rather than this kind of piecemeal approach of the manager, assistant, technical director, purely because it would have saved a lot of the negativity I think that we saw after the Dawes appointment. I think if this had been announced as one package, everyone would have kind of pretty much bought into this straight away and understood, we're bringing someone with loads of experience. We're going to give Ian Dawes a chance to develop as a promising kind of young manager, and we're going to bring Neil Dans in as someone who's actually just had a season of successful management, his first season, and to work within that team. And it shows fresh, new approach. It shows outside voices we've not had around for a while coming in and being part of it. And it would have saved Ian Dawes some of that negativity that he will have got from that, from that initial messaging. And there'll be reasons why they decided to do that approach, but my counsel would have been not to do it that way and to do it as a kind of joined up one big announcement and then really push the season tickets from the Thursday onwards. Maybe they weren't in a position to actually, dot the I's and cross the T's with Nigel until today, and they felt they needed to do something last week. So, who knows what's happened behind the scenes, but I don't think it was the ideal way to do that. And it's been a microcosm of a Tranmere fan, really, of us going through the emotions over the last few days, hasn't it? I think we've all gone kind of from one very negative kind of initial feel. And that was nothing against Ian Dawes, but it just felt a bit underwhelming and a bit, we weren't really going anywhere at that point. So I've rambled on for a little bit there, but I think we all feel a lot more positive today with this. And I'm particularly keen as well to see a little bit about exactly how this is going to work in terms of the recruitment. I did look at his last job was Charlton, I think, wasn't it? A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And there was an interesting thing is that he started well, I think, when he first came in at the end of the season, and then in the closed season there was a turnover of 15 or 16 players, and it didn't really work out. And he talked about being disappointed with how that window had gone. And there was a familiar kind of thing that I read through that, which was that he was disappointed at the club not really allowing him to bring the players in early enough, and therefore the side wasn't settled for after pre-season. It meant the club started slowly. So I'm sure he will be coming here determined to get the names he wants into the door as soon as possible, really, to give the club that chance to hit the ground running in the start of the season. And it'd be really interesting to see if we manage to do that. Obviously, Tom Davis is the first of those names and a big signing for us. But I'd love to see, some 2 or 3 new signings coming in key positions, and maybe 2 or 3, new contracts for current players that we really want to keep to really kind of set us off on that running.
What interests me is how much knowledge does Nigel Adkins have of the kind of player that Tranmere are going after? And I genuinely don't know the answer to that question. That's not me asking it in a negative way. It's not me asking it in a positive way. I don't know how much football Nigel Adkins has watched. So is he now going to be getting informed by scouts as opposed to making his own informed decision, having watched loads of players? Because he has, in terms of being a manager, he's been out of the game for a bit. I don't know if he's been watching loads of football. He may well have been. But his remit is, as you say, it's going to be very much in the transfer market. It's going to be setting the route forward for this club in terms of the way he wants to see the club play on the field, and bringing in the players that Mark Palios can eventually sell on and make a profit out of, which I think we've all got our views on whether or not that can be successful. But it depends on bringing the right player to the club in the first place. So it is going to be crucial that Nigel Adkins has the contacts available. Well, it's a big tick there, I'd imagine, to get the right players in, but also that he's got the knowledge of a player, be it in League One, League Two, the Championship, the National League, the Premier League, whatever it might be. That is the most crucial thing here, isn't it?
Rich, do you want to go?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're shopping in the same sort of windows we've always shopped in. I think as far as the model goes, we'll find out whether that starts working or not. Will Bristow be sold? If he is sold, for how much? He's the outstanding starlet, I think, that we've got from this year's crop of intern of talent. So Bristow is going to be interesting to see where the ambitions are with him and what happens. The next question, they've said they've offered a contract to Dacus Cogley, someone who I think his performance has massively dipped since December, January time. Has that done enough to deter interest in him? Is he going to sign a deal with Tranmere? Is he going to sign a deal with Tranmere that allows him a little bit more freedom if there was to be another offer come in for him? So I know the club has sort of alluded to there was an offer in for him in January that we kind of decided wasn't right to take. We wanted to keep our best prospects at that time. So there's interesting questions as far as has Nigel Adkins been sat there watching games every week? I doubt it. Has he got enough knowledge of what's about? I'd say so. I'd say he's got just as much, if not more, knowledge than Dawes and Maynard. I think that the level that Tranmere are at, there's going to be an awful lot of scouting network that will be passing on information to him, but there's going to be an awful lot of other questions asked. So, we will still be looking geographically. You're not going to be paying enough for a player to totally change his life in a lot of cases to move the whole length of the country unless you're going for, a fairly decent sized contract. You're not going to be getting someone who's going to want to relocate for a massive amount of distance. So it is going to be the usual suspects, I think. It would be. I saw a tweet today about the National League Team of the Year. And it was, I got Paul Ritchie wrong. Paul Ritchie's dad is actually called Paul Ritchie. I thought I was replying to a tweet from Paul Ritchie. It was tainted with the same Ritchie kind of, this is the team we should be going after. And it was 4 or 5 of the National League Team of the Year. And you look at them, they'll all be on bigger contracts than what we could offer. You look at Notts County with Macaulay Langstaff, Paul Mullin, Ben Tozer in the National League Team of the Year, and the shots, there should be who we should be going after. Reality of it is that league, there's been some serious money chucked at people. They're not going to fit into our business model, even if County, who have now made it to Wembley, don't get through. We can't just go and knock on the door and go, come to Tranmere, move from Nottingham. We're not going to be offering life-changing amounts of money. I'd love to see us dip maybe a little bit into the National League North. Is it Kurt Willoughby from Chester? I think he's scored enough goals this season for a proper look at someone like that. I'd love it if Rhys Hughes had left a few little calling cards in his locker at Chester while he was there, Agent Hughes. I think you said the key thing for me, if Nigel Adkins knows a good quality young goalkeeper and a good quality League Two player that could score 20 goals, do you know what? I think we could be getting another statue made outside Prenton Park, couldn't we?
I think he'll bring. I think it's actually going to be more about a team effort than it is just about hoping that Nigel Adkins is coming in with a knowledge of lower league players. I mean, I think Neil Dans is the interesting one there for me as well, because I'm sure he'll have some ideas of some of the players we might want to be looking for in some of those National League, outside of Football League levels. And maybe it'll be a case of, Dawes and Dans and Parky identifying a few people and discussing that with Adkins and whether that's going to fit in with his model. And maybe Adkins will focus a little bit on maybe bringing in some of those Football League players at higher levels, either initially on loan or kind of players that he's aware of that are coming out of academies, or through his contacts might get some suggestions from trusted colleagues. So I would imagine it'll be a bit of all of it. I'm not expecting Nigel Adkins will have a wealth of knowledge on League Two, National League level players. But I have always been surprised that we don't do more shopping in that National League basket. And yes, you might be right about Wrexham and Notts County. Absolutely, we're not going to be going after their best talents, but there's lots of other very good players, and we did that very successfully, under Brabin, in terms of going out and recruiting players from a few different clubs who were very strong players in that league. I still think they would be great players now, and we saw that they stepped up and got us promoted from League Two to League One. The majority of those players that they carried through. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see and hear from him. Actually, it'd be really interesting if they put him up to really kind of talk through strategies or have some kind of fan engagement events a couple of months into his tenure, where fans can maybe ask questions about directions and how the model works and who else might be involved. I thought the other interesting news today was Hodgie coming back to the club as well. I think that's a really strong, positive sign, because by all accounts he's a very popular guy and brings some real knowledge of of kind of cutting edge sports performance and fitness. And I think he's a really good person to have back around the club. But yeah, how that works, whether there's a scouting network, whether we go through our existing scouting platforms, be interesting to see. And I'd like to hear more of that. I wonder if at some point we will hear either something from the chairman in one of his kind of Q&As, or whether we will get the opportunity to put questions to Adkins. But like I said earlier, I think this next couple of months we'll really see, won't we? What sort of players are going to be coming through the door. We did hear Dawes the other day in his presser talking about getting the balance right between success on the pitch and the development model, which suggests that there really is going to be a target of kind of those two key things. One is players that are going to come good in 2 or 3 years, and then we can bring them through, and players that are ready now. And we know that we didn't get the balance right last year. But the players that I think we brought in, the likes of Reece McAleer, we might see coming back and making an impact next season here. And I've been impressed with Hughes. Sam Taylor got his first goal. There are some players there that I think could step up next season. But are we going to keep hold of the likes of Josh Hawkes? And are we going to try and sell on someone like Leo Connor? Be interesting to see in the summer what happens with that. But I expect to see a similar idea of maybe a third of the squad is development, trying to work into first team picture. A third of it is kind of, the ready to go players who can bulk out the squad, and then a third of it is maybe less than a third, but other top end players in each position that we need with the experience to really support the others to come through. And if we get the balance right, then I think it could be really interesting to see, because we know Dawes and Pardew like to play an ambitious attacking style of football. We certainly saw that in the first spell when they were caretakers. It'd be interesting to see whether they are the ones dictating the style of play, and we continue to see a diamond, or actually whether that gets set by the technical director in terms of tactics, formation, how we want to run things through the club at various levels.
I think a few points to make now. Firstly, on Ian Dawes, the club clearly think, and I'm told that they clearly think he is an exceptional coach. And that is now his role, isn't it? He is clearly head coach. Tranmere have moved away from having a manager. They have a head coach. And basically Nigel Adkins will do the role, or some of the roles that we would familiarise with a manager, whereas Ian Dawes is now going to be more of a head coach. And I'm told that he's very good at that. That's what the club believes. So that's interesting in that sense. Also, I wanted to go through the statement, because we did this on Thursday to a negative sense, so we should definitely go through it the other way, or certainly some of the reactions were negative to the statement on Thursday. So Mark Palias says, appointing Nigel to this important role is the final piece in the jigsaw we have been assembling. As a former Tranmere player, a physiotherapist, and a hugely experienced manager, Nigel is uniquely placed to sit across the club's critical football process. His wise counsel will doubtless be invaluable to Ian Dawes as he seeks to make his mark as an up-and-coming manager, with Nigel, Ian Dawes, Neil Danson, Andy Parkinson, and the returning Andy Hodgson all playing integral roles within the first team. Within the team, behind the team, I think we have assembled an exciting group of professionals to give us a platform for success. And Nigel Adkins said, the opportunity to come back to Tranmere Rovers, my hometown club, where it all began as an apprentice professional footballer, and to work with my former teammate Mark Palios, was too big to turn down. There is a vision to improve and develop, and I'm excited to be a part of this process. So that takes me back to something that we talked about on Thursday, and something that you've kind of mentioned already, both of you, in the statement on Thursday. It did mention getting that balance right between developing young players and winning games. And we read into that, between the lines, that's basically saying, or to a degree saying, maybe promotion isn't the main aim. The main aim is winning a few games, making some players good, and then selling them. Do you feel that with someone like Nigel coming in, Rich, that the ambition is clearly there to win promotion when perhaps we thought it wasn't on Thursday?
And this is where I think we may see with this appointment a Palios 2.0. I think you may not see as much transparency. Let's be honest, the disaster from last year was telling. in one of his Wine Wednesdays when he sat there and they on like we are now on YouTube, telling people about goals, goals, goals. We want to play 10 yards further up the pitch. We're at the ultimate aim is promotion. I think that in hindsight, he wishes that never was spoke about. I think realistically, the aim for Tranmere Rovers is to be a sustainable football club. He's had to put his hand in his pocket to the tone of £200,000 this year. And the easiest way for him to make the club bigger and better and get more money coming in is get us up those leagues. So we can't be flirting with the relegation out of this league because we know how dangerous that trapdoor is to get stuck in the National League, and to move us back up the pyramid is the common sense way for him to save this business, which is, let's be honest, he's an accountant that's come in to do that. And ultimately, when he walked through the doors, we did have that other relegation out of the National League while he was in charge of the club. But ultimately, that relegation had started 2, 3, 4 years prior with the cost cutting, with the scrimping. So he knows that you can't scrimp and save to make money. You've got to speculate to accumulate. And one of the easiest ways to accumulate for him to move his vision forward, to leave ultimately what I've always thought of Mark Palace and I've always had the most respect for is I believe he has a vision for a legacy. And the legacy of himself. If he didn't want to do this, he would have stayed in the south of France. He's not in this game to make money. He's in this game for his legacy, for something for him to be proud of. For me, that's what my honest belief is. What do I know? I'm just a humble, happy clapper. I daydream about the chance of winning stuff and moving up the leagues and, cup runs like we've all had throughout the last 20, 30 years. Following the club, most of us in our age bracket have been very, very lucky. We've had a League Cup final and then we turned what was the sourest note of moving out of Football League into some fantastic memories as well. So I think, and for me, I think we're going to see a lot less transparency from the club, putting stuff that can really be used to trip him up in future and putting that extra level of protection in there with someone like Nigel. The aim, no doubt, is going to be for Tranmere to be as successful they can be with what resources they have. Whether that be promotion or not, that will maybe not necessarily be an outward thing from the chairman anymore. I think if anyone does say it, that's where the accountability lies from maybe someone like Nigel or, and the one thing that sticks in my mind about this appointment of Nigel Adkins, you look at the Premier League this season, isn't it 14 or 15 managers changed this season in the Premier League? Football managers' lifespan now is 6 months. If you bring in someone like Nigel Adkins into the club, which has the personal relationship with the chairman that he does, he's not one to be turning him away in 6 months' time. If there is a bad run of form, if we are massively missing objectives, he's going to be there hopefully for the long term, as we said. I think we know the James Vaughan appointment of the technical role there for James Vaughan, that was probably more due to his retiring early while still under contract. And I think there was a little bit of a favour there done by James Vaughan for wages that weren't taken and such and such. So I think that was more of a technicality name rather than an actual, this is what I'm going to be doing, as a full-time job. And I think as soon as Everton came calling, there was no chance that he was staying on. I'd like to think there's a little bit more longevity there in Nigel. And let's hope that we're having a promotion party in the glass tent in May next year. But whether we get Mark Palios saying things like that again, I don't think so. And I can't blame him.
I think, like I say, the proof will be in the pudding this transfer window, really, as to what our ambition is for this season. But I wouldn't have thought Adkins would be a particularly cheap appointment. So it's interesting to see if we do see whether there is more investment in the pipeline, whether there's something else happening in the background there, because there was some people speculating that the appointment of Ian Dawes was because it was a kind of stopgap appointment because of potential takeover or investment, and that it was just keeping the kind of car ticking over until someone else came in to bring in their own manager. I would suggest this seems like it's not that kind of deal. It seems like Palace probably is planning to be around for quite a bit longer if he's brought Adkins in and there's a longer term project there in mind. So is there more investment coming in? Oh, we all want to see that, obviously, but I wouldn't have thought he wants to come into a model where it's just a case of, you know, developing a few players and, you know, see what happens. I would like to think there's going to be some kind of plan there for us to actually make a serious tilt of promotion in the next couple of years. Possibly we're looking at a 3-year plan or something with, you know, see how those developing players do, sell a bit on, make a bit of money, develop a squad that's kind of young, hungry, and wants to aim for promotion. But it will all come down to the, you know, are we willing to maybe change the way we've done things on transfers a bit and not wait until the last minute for people to drop demands, or, you know, go in with an offer that really makes people want to come and play for us and not just see us as the backup option if a deal falls through, you know, which we've seen in all those forms in the last few windows. I think we really need to, I mean, maybe Adkins can advise a bit on that, those kind of deals for Mark, because whatever we've been doing hasn't been working out in terms of recruitment in the past. So yeah, lots to prove, but I think this appointment for me really does give me some hope that there's a new way of working in the offing here, and interested to see how it's going to work out.
And it's certainly reflected in the positivity that's coming through in the chat feed here as well. James Dolphin says, best signing we've had in years. Colin Hamlet says, great news. Think we'll be able to push on now. Graham Hickey, this is the trick up the sleeve I hoped Mark Palias had, but I didn't expect him to necessarily have it. So we're all feeling a little bit brighter and a little bit sunnier now. And obviously that's been reflected as the SLOs have said in a real surge in season tickets going into the game tomorrow. And of course, the deadline tomorrow. It is the final game of the season against Northampton tomorrow. I'm sure Nigel Adkins will be paraded out on the pitch beforehand. Maybe indoors will join him for that as well, because it does feel very much like a new era now, even if the old era is still there, which is quite strange. It's like a mismatch of a mishmash of eras. But hopefully it can be successful. But I think what I would say, to go back to Rob's point to wrap up, would be that all this is all very well and good, but it goes back to that thing that Mickey Mellon said last summer, is the club have got to be more aggressive in the transfer market. And if they are more aggressive in the transfer market, and if they can therefore get the names and their targets over the line, then ultimately they will be successful. And hopefully this new coaching team can be successful. This new structure can be successful, but it does depend largely on bringing the right players to the club as and when you can. So let's hope that happens as well. It's going to be fascinating to see. It really is. And it all starts tomorrow against Northampton. We'll be back with a review of that game on Tuesday. It's been a very busy few days, hasn't it, on the A Trip to the Moon podcast with these couple of live shows. But we will be back with a review on Tuesday morning of that one. Please do hit like on this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel for free as well. And please come and subscribe to the podcast as well. It is only £3 a month. For that, you get loads of shows, you get player interviews. I've got some exciting features hopefully coming over the summer if they can be pulled off, because there's a few exciting names that I want to tie down to do a couple of interviews as well. So let's see if that comes in. But just go to a triptothemoonpod.co.uk. You can sign up for £3 a month there, and you get your couple of podcasts every week. In the off season, you get 3 podcasts a week in the season as well. Rob, Rich, thank you very much for joining me at this very late notice. We thought we'd better bring you something to react to the news. Thanks to all of you who've joined as well. Thanks for all of your interaction, and we will speak to you again in a few days' time.